Hi, and welcome to the second installment of the Figgy Live Demo Series, where we cover the fundamentals of how Figgy can help your organization wrangle its configurations and secrets. Today I'll be showing you how Figgy can help your secret owners securely store and share their secrets directly with the code that uses them. To do this, I'll be impersonating a database administrator, also known as the secret owner, and a developer who is writing code that requires these secrets. If you haven't seen the first video yet, I highly recommend you watch that, as we will be picking up where we left off there. So let's get started. First, we're going to start out as a developer. I do not have the hat on, therefore I am impersonating the developer. To perform this demo, I'm going to need a temporary session to the Figgy Sandbox. The Figgy Sandbox is a workspace for anybody to use and interact with Figgy in a already set up environment. It's wiped on a regular basis, so anything you do there will be cleaned up within 24 hours. So I'm going to log into the sandbox and impersonate a developer role. To do so, I just type in Figgy login sandbox. I'm going to pick a username, and I'm going to impersonate the developer role. If you recall in the first video, we created a basic little Flask API that retrieves a few configurations from AWS Parameter Store. Those configurations are the secret admirer, the admired person, and the jealous person. When we run our API, these are returned through a basic RESTful route that we can look up. We need to make sure that those configs exist. So in order to do so, if you remember, we run Figgy config sync and we target the environment. So let's make sure that every configuration we need for this service is already stored in the dev environment. Looks like they're not. So let's add our admired person. That's Mariah. Our secret admirer, that's me. Mariah's my wife, by the way. And the jealous person, that's Jimmy. Okay, all of our configs exist. This means our app should run. So if I run my app locally, let me export temporary credentials so I can. When I run my app, I should be able to pull all these down and see the basic endpoint return. So I'm running it. Looks like we're up and live. And let me open up the endpoint. Hello, Mariah. Jordan is admiring you and Jimmy is jealous. We're good to go. Okay, so next. Most applications don't just need a few configurations that statically get served once the app's been bootstrapped. You often need to connect to other, outside services such as databases. So those database credentials might not be owned by the developer, me. Instead, those might need to be shared with me so that my application can consume them. In most organizations, that simply happens by database administrator or whoever owns that data store just gives those credentials to the developer. Really hope they don't give them over Slack or whatever, because Figgy has something for that, but that will be covered in another video. What we really want to do here is ask a database administrator to provision us an account so that our application can connect to a database, and then we want to have our application get those credentials dynamically at Bootstrap. The developer should never even see those credentials. And we'll talk about how that all works. It's a bunch of magic and automation behind the scenes. So first, the way this interaction would happen is I'm the developer. I would tell the database administrator, we'll call him Steve. Hey, Steve, I need a username and password for my secure share demo app. Now, if I'm Steve, I say, sure, Jordan, I'd be happy to provision you a username and password and access to this database. So Figgy has a few different ways that you can add and store secrets or configurations. You could do it through the CLI. But what I prefer personally is to statically define my secrets in a configuration file. That way, these secrets, which will be used across many different environments. So you'll have a different secret in dev and QA, but they'll be stored in the exact same location in parameter store depending on which environment you're in. So as you promote your application and deploy it to higher environments, those secrets will always be in the same place. So your app code is always referencing the same location, and it'll just load the appropriate secret for the appropriate environment as it gets there. So if I'm Steve, I want to provision some secrets. The way Figgy does this is it has a special kind of process called replication. So what Steve is able to do is store some secrets in parameter store and then push them out to my application, to Jordan, the developer's application. Those secrets, when they're pushed out to the application, they're pushed into a special space where the application receives all of its configurations. And that space is, when you look at that space, you know every single secret and configuration used by that application. It makes it very simple to write IAM policies. So what we're doing here is we've defined, I want to create two secrets, the secure share demo user and the secure share demo password. And then I want to push them out to the secure share demo application at these paths in parameter store. So in order to do this, you write up this little JSON file, and then the database administrator, who would have written this, will just run sync against each environment to validate that they're there. So let me log in as the DBA. So I'm going to be Steve, of course, and I'm going to take the DBA role. Now, when I'm in the DBA role, I have different access. Easy way to see this is different access to different trees within parameter store, the parameter store hierarchy. So in the Figgy sandbox, DBAs can see the app tree, which is the application configurations, the DBA tree, which is where they store their database administrator configurations and secrets, and then the global shared tree. You can create these trees however you like when you configure Figgy. So to make sure that the configs I need exist in parameter store and are shared with the application, all I need to do is run sync. And I'm going to pass in the dev account. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying Figgy config sync. I'm passing in this configuration file. And what this is doing is Figgy is going to compare the state in parameter store with the local configuration file and validate that that's all synchronized. If the configurations are missing and they're not properly being shared, Figgy's going to set that all up. So it looks like we have never added these user and password. So let's add that. So share demo user. This is a secret. We're going to encrypt it with the data key. Keep in mind, I'm still the DBA right now. And the share demo password. So do a really secure password here. Yep, and this is a secret, and we're going to encrypt that with the data key. Now, Figgy has not only just created both of these, it has now set up what's called replication. It's a process that is running in the background that keeps these synchronized and pushed out to the target applications. So we have said, create the secret here on the secure share demo password and replicate any changes and keep it synchronized with the actual application service that's consuming it under its location. So now I've created and shared the secrets with the developer, and the developer, the developer's application, not the developer. Now, if I take my DBA hat off, let me log back in as the developer. All right, now I'm a developer. So my application needs to use this username and password. Well, the DBA would have told me, I've shared you these secrets and here's the location of them. Fortunately, I can reference this file. So I'm just going to copy these and pop them into my application code saying, hey, my app now requires these new configurations. So we have a SQL user. And with our Figgy shared library, this is an open source library that you can use for Python. We just put in the path, we're creating a shared fig, which means this is a configuration that's shared with us by the secret owner or some third party. And there's also a SQL password. And that is here. And now I've referenced it in my code. So now I can look these up from parameter store at the appropriate location. So if I go to my application code here, I have a route called dbcreds that will return the user and the password. So if I rerun my application, I can just rerun my application. Everything should pop in, no problem, if I go to the dbcreds route. There we go. Now, if I am the database administrator, what if I wanted to update this value? Well, let's do that. So check this out. Let's Figgy login sandbox. Hop back into the DBA role. Oops, Steve. And we're going to use the Figgy UI to update the value. So we created the password. It was password. We realized, you know what? This isn't a very good password. We should probably update that, right? So in the Figgy UI, let me pull this over. We can easily browse all of our configurations across multiple accounts and AWS regions. We've been operating in the dev account, and right now we're automatically authenticated as Steve in the DBA role. So if I go to secrets, MySQL, secure share, isn't that what I'm in? Secure share demo. Let me double check that. Yes. We can see that the password that I set was password. We want to update that. New password. This is definitely a much more secure password. So I'm going to update that. This will change the value under the database administrator namespace. If we click details here, remember I talked a minute about Figgy keeps the source of truth is in the DBA namespace, but this value is replicated and synchronized downstream with the application itself. If we click the replicating to value, you'll see that we've now been scrolled through under app, secure share demo, replicated SQL password, and we can see that the password has been updated in the new location. Most importantly, we can see that the value is encrypted with the replication key. This is a special encryption key that in the dev environment we have access to so that people can develop locally and also against the dev environment easily. But when we go to production, nobody has access to this encryption key except for the Figgy administrator and the applications running themselves. This way you can create a password for the production database, which is incredibly sensitive, and share it with the code that requires it directly, and the developers and nobody else can see it, and they don't need to see it. All they need to know is that their application has the credentials that are required. This makes it so that the owner of the secret truly owns the secret, and we maintain absolute least privilege at all times. Let me show you how that works. So I'm the database administrator right now. We've only added these secrets to production, or to development, excuse me. So let's add them to production. If you recall, we just do the sync command and we can now target a different environment. Let's go straight to prod. We're YOLOing here. So we're going to check to see if these secrets already exist in production. They do not. So we want to add the user, secure share demo user prod. This is a secret. We're going to encrypt it with the data key, and we also need to add the password. Okay. Okay, so that's sync completed. Now, if we swap on the developer hat, which I didn't have the hat on, I should have had the hat on, I was DBA. Let me flip back, log in sandbox, hop into the developer role. So Jordo dev. Now I need to make sure my application configurations and secrets are all there. So before I deploy, I might want to run Figgy config validate for the prod environment. Let's find out if everything is required for my app exists. It looks like my app has the SQL user and the SQL password in production. That's because we just added them with the DBA role. But my app is missing my standard configurations. So before we deploy, this is a great step to run during CI/CD pipelines. We want to fix that. We want to run sync, and we will be prompted to add the missing configurations. So the secret admirer, of course, is that's me. And the admired person is, of course, my wonderful wife, Mariah. And the jealous person is Jimmy. All right. Sync completed with no errors. This means we're good to go. So if we run validate against production, it should say, hey, all the configurations that are referenced by your application code exist in parameter store. Your deployment is good to go. Now, I cannot run my code against production because I don't have the ability to export credentials locally to production, which is a good thing. But what I can do is kind of demonstrate how I don't have access to do that. So I'm going to swap back into the DBA role here. I'm going to simulate the best I can by just showing you the configurations in production is what I'm going to do. So we're going to be Steve, of course. We're a database administrator. Now we're hopped in. So let's open up the UI. Oops, sorry, wrong command there. It's just Figgy UI. Window popped up. Just pops into a different browser tab. Here we go. All right, so we're in dev. Let's pop into production. Now we're Steve, DBA prod. We're looking at US East 1, which is what we've been working against this whole time. And we can look under DBA, secrets, MySQL, secure share demo, and we saw our password that we stored was this. Now we know that this is shared. If you remember from the first example, it's replicating to this destination. If I click on this, I should be able to see this value. But since we're in production, I cannot decrypt it. This value has been replicated and securely shared directly with the application code. One of the great things about Figgy is that every service has access to one namespace in parameter store where all of its configurations exist. So essentially, if you ever need to know what the dependencies are for the service, what all of its configs are, and if it's using a configuration or not, you can just look right in here and look under the tree and just look and see what the values are. So we can see that the admired person is, of course, Mariah, the jealous person is Jimmy, and the admirer is Jordan. The other nice thing is that we can also, if we go back to the source, one nice feature of the Figgy UI and Figgy in general is that it, of course, maintains a full history. So if I want to rotate the password as database administrator and I save it, I can actually see the full history here. So I can see that the value used to be this, and then it was changed to this. And there's a whole bunch of other observability functionality that's built in under Investigate that will be shown in a future video. So we can see what changed, when, by who, and even see who viewed what configuration and when. This gives us a ton of visibility into our environment, and it helps with postmortems and tracking down what happened when configuration mishaps occur. But I promise you, if you use Figgy and you use it appropriately, the design of the system is that it's almost impossible to have a configuration mishap because your CI pipelines should always validate that the right configs are stored, or the configs at least exist. We can't protect you from making a typo as you type it in, but we can protect you for forgetting configurations or deleting them incidentally. So that's the basic demo of how you can create a configuration as a secret owner, share it directly with the application code and the applications that require it without having to go through a middleman. So if one of your developers quits or something like that, you don't have to worry that they're walking out the door with your secrets. Thanks for your time, and be sure to check in for our next live demo series video. I don't have the topic yet, but we'll get there. Thank you.